Coming up on Hoosier Sports Night, the women's basketball team battles to keep their top 25 ranking alive against the Northwestern Wildcats.
And can the IU men's basketball team turn their season around to grab a win against Purdue? Find out right now on Hoosier Sports Night.
Welcome back to Hoosier Sports Night as we begin season number 17 of the show. I'm Griffin Gonzalez. Beside me, the one, the only Meredith Struing. Meredith, welcome back. How are you?
Thank you. Welcome back to you too. And I'm great. And I just have to say, New Year, New Year's resolutions, people are going to be making them all over.
Of course.
So I have to ask you, what is your New Year's resolution for IU athletics? Any sport, any team?
That's a tough one. But what I'm going to go with is I think Indiana University brings in a ton of new coaches this year, a ton of talent. It'd be cool to see them bring home a championship. I know they didn't have one in 2018. It'd be cool to see the Hoosiers bring one home in 2019.
I agree. Kind of going off that, like you said, we have new coaches, IU wrestling, IU women's soccer. I'd like to see Indiana University really just have those coaches bring in more wins than losses. They have impressive resumes, and I'm excited to see where they're at.
For sure. Absolutely.
And hopefully we're able to check off at least one of those resolutions. With that, we'll jump right into it with the latest from Wednesday night with Indiana women's basketball, where they lost their second of the last 3 games. My co-host, Griffin Gonzalez, was in attendance for the action, so let's turn it over to him for the recap.
First time since returning to class this semester, the Indiana Hoosiers women's basketball team returned here to Assembly Hall to take on the Northwestern Wildcats. Both teams started off on slow shooting starts, and IU could never really recover. Indiana would go 4 of 22 on their first 26 shots of the ball game. As for Northwestern, after starting the game 0 for 3, the basket became an ocean as they shot for 66% and pulled ahead by 11 to end the half. In the second, an early fight by the Hoosiers would be combated by fantastic free throw shooting by the Wildcats, and despite a late comeback in the fourth period, it just wasn't enough to get the job done.
That at the end of the day, it just comes down to who wants the ball more. And tonight they beat us to 50-50 balls. They beat us to hustle plays, and that's uncharacteristic of our basketball team. And so, we got to fix that.
So there you have it. Northwestern deals the Hoosiers their 3rd loss of the year and 2nd in the conference as the Hoosiers fall to the Wildcats by a final score of 75-69. Now, in no way, shape, or form is the season done for the Hoosiers yet. In fact, they have their biggest game coming this Sunday against arch rival, the Purdue Boilermakers in West Lafayette. They'll head up there on Sunday. We're going to have you covered all day long, so be sure to stay tuned to all the IUS TV sports coverage. For IUS TV Sports here in Assembly Hall, I'm Griffin Gonzalez.
And you can watch the Purdue game this coming Sunday at 2 p.m. on BTN+.
Now, the women's team isn't the only basketball team heading to West Lafayette this weekend, as the men's team also looks to end a 3-game losing streak in conference play. Our Dan Black has more.
From the opening tip, Indiana struggled against Nebraska. It was just another game of early offensive struggles for the Hoosiers that they fought to shrug off. After falling behind 9-0, IU found a couple buckets to fall, but just could not keep it close enough for them to really have a puncher's chance, despite good performances from Juwan Morgan and Romeo Langford in the 66-51 loss. The difficulties the team has faced opening games is something Juwan Morgan feels doesn't have a simple fix.
There's no one answer to that question. I just think, as we get guys back and, just over the course of practice and stuff, just having everybody on deck to go. But at the same time, it's just something that you got to have. Like, you can't wake somebody up for them. They have to be ready to go.
With the loss now behind them, the Hoosiers will have to look for new ways to win as they head to Purdue Saturday afternoon. Due to the injury pileup, IU will need to find positive contributions from all available players like the one they got from Clifton Moore against the Cornhuskers. They will also have to focus on lockdown defense as they face a top 3 scoring team in the conference, especially from deep, and not let this 3-game losing streak go on any further.
It's all about Purdue. I mean, you can't get caught up in the schedule, because if you get caught up in the schedule, at the end of the day, you're worrying about the wrong things. We've got to get back to work. We got to put some things together here. Our guys got to start to regroup, and our staff's got to do a good job with that. And we have to prepare to play Purdue. That's the biggest game on the schedule.
Archie Miller's plan is simple enough, and hopefully for the Hoosiers, simplicity will reign supreme in West Lafayette.
Be sure to follow our very own Dan Black and Jared Rigdon on Twitter at IUSTV Sports for updates during Saturday's game.
With a new semester comes new seasons, and one IU team is off to a blazing 2-0 start. The IU men's tennis team opened up their season at home in dominant fashion, picking up wins versus Ball State and Toledo. Indiana got off to a hot start and never really looked back, sweeping the Cardinals by a score of 7-0. Even though they only had a few hours to rest until their next match, the Hoosiers didn't let up, defeating the Toledo Rockets by the same score. In total, 8 different Hoosiers contributed to the victories, only losing a combined 2 sets throughout the entire day. The Hoosiers will look to go 3-0 when they travel to New Hampshire this Sunday to face off against Dartmouth.
When we come back, Stephen Walker gives us an inside look at IU's newest athletic facility right next door to Assembly Hall.
And we chat with Maxwell Sterling Glenn about the upcoming water polo season. You're watching Hoosier Sports Night.
Now, one New Year's resolution that the IU athletics team does not have to make this year is finishing Wilkinson Hall. We now turn it over to Stephen Walker to tell us all about it.
University Gym has been home to Indiana wrestling since 1985, but in recent years many people thought it was time for a change in scenery. Well, that change came in 2017 when IU announced plans for a brand new arena, Wilkinson Hall, in recognition of contributions made by IU alumnus Jay Wilkinson. The multi-use facility was scheduled to open on September 21st last year, but construction kept getting delayed. A few more setbacks would take place before a definitive date was finally announced. That all led to Sunday afternoon, when the Indiana Hoosiers defeated the Maryland Terrapins 36-3 in the first ever match here at Wilkinson Hall. A big part of that was the atmosphere brought on by the fans sitting right here in these stands.
You know what? Some of the guys was like, "Wow, it's really loud in there," and that was good to hear. And the other guys were like, "Yeah, I can't wait to go out there." And you kind of just fed off that message.
The fans were booming all afternoon, and head coach Angel Escobedo himself said you can't compare University Gym to the atmosphere he felt in Wilkinson Hall.
You can't even compare it. You really can't. I mean, my guys were saying, you could actually hear the fans and, how loud they got. And they're like, we could never hear that before.
IU Wrestling honored its former All-Americans as part of the grand opening, and the team took time to give back to the fans by signing autographs after the match. Senior Jake Danishek gave his thoughts on the fans and the arena, saying it went above and beyond.
It was an incredible atmosphere. It's been a couple of years coming, really. So it was well worth the wait, and it was above expectation for sure, I would say.
The Hoosiers won't return to Wilkinson Hall until January 27th when Penn State comes to town. But based on the intensity of those fans, expect their ears to still be ringing when they enter that arena. Reporting for IUSTV Sports, I'm Stephen Walker.
Now, not only will Wilkinson Hall be home to the wrestling team, but it will also be the new home of Indiana volleyball as well.
Moving on to water polo, the IU women's team will kick off their season in Santa Barbara, California this weekend. We'll toss it over to Austin Matricardi and Maxwell Sterling Glenn at the media wall to find out what they expect from this team. Austin?
Thanks, Meredith. Maxwell, let's dive right in. Over the offseason, the Hoosiers made the switch. They're now a member of the Mountain Pacific Sports Federation. What does that conference change? What kind of effect will that have?
I mean, it has a huge effect. I mean, it puts Indiana in talks with some of the best programs in the nation. It's a long-term effect, though. We're not going to see something right away, but this team is going to be building. This is a long-term process. I spoke to Coach Castle about it, and he's looking long-term. So it's going to be a long process, but what the effect in the future is going to be huge.
One thing that's not going to help the Hoosiers is that 3 of their top 4 goal scorers from last season are gone. What are the Hoosiers going to do about that? Who could they look to kind of carry on some of that scoring?
Well, it's a huge loss, but they're going to be looking to Emily Powell, their captain. Last year, it became apparent that that was the plan heading into the last season, as they knew that they were going to be losing players the next year. And Powell has stepped up and really assume that position, so she'll be the go-to player. She's a junior. She knows what she's doing. She'll be reliable for them.
Another big loss for the Hoosiers is goalkeeper Jessica Gaudreau. She's a Canadian international, very solid player for the Hoosiers, and now she's graduated as well. Who's going to be in between the posts for the Hoosiers?
So they have 3 goalies, so they have some depth, but you can't replace a player like Jessica Gaudreau. I mean, she was pivotal to the whole team. But they have an understudy of hers that is a junior, so Davis Simmons could be someone that going forward they'll start with, and then we'll see how the freshmen do in actual college play.
So with all of this change going on with IU water polo, what can Hoosier fans expect to see in the pool this winter?
Now, it may not be wins right off the bat, but it's going to be some great water polo. You're going to see the quality of playing improve, and down the line it's just going to continue to get better.
All right, Maxwell, thanks for coming in and helping us get geared up for another season in the pool. Make sure to follow along with our coverage on social media, where we'll have you covered all season long. Back to you, Meredith.
Thanks, guys. That match against UC Santa Barbara will kick off at 3 p.m. on Saturday. Be sure to follow our IUSTV Sports for updates.
Indiana Track and Field will welcome a dozen teams this weekend in Bloomington for the Gladstein Invitational. The Hoosiers have a pair of top-flight runners in the 800-meter race, with Kelsey Harris and Cooper Williams each having the best time in the nation for the women and men, respectively. Alongside Harris and Williams, sprinter and Singapore native Zubin Muncherji heads into the weekend holding the national record in his home country for the 200-meter, 400-meter, 500-meter, and 600-meter. My goodness! Finally, the men's team heads into the indoor season ranked as the highest nationally ranked Big Ten team at number 11. Following them are 14 Penn State, number 16 Wisconsin, Illinois at 20, and rounding out the bottom of the top 25, Ohio State. The action is set to begin at 3:30 on Friday and will resume at 10:45 on Saturday morning.
Well, that's the end of our show, but don't forget to like our page, IUSTV Sports, on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter at IUSTV Sports. For Griffin Gonzalez, I'm Meredith Struing. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.